Hey everyone, this is Stuart, Victor Echo 9, Charlie Foxtrot, and welcome back to another episode of our Ham Radio Insights. I bring together thought leaders and just really cool people in the ham radio community. And I have a really cool person in the ham radio community today. He has a great first name too. For you guys who are very active in POTA would know VE3RGO, Mr. Stuart Hayes, who joins us from almost close to the center of the universe in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, just outside. He's in that gravitational pull area of the center of the universe. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Stuart Hayes of VE3RGO and VE1RGO joins us today to talk about, small station contesting. Mr. Hayes, welcome to the program, sir. It's always a pleasure to have a few minutes with you to talk about ham radio stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stuart. I think I prefer VE1RGO, but I only use it when I'm out east. I don't use it when I'm here, and I miss using it when I'm here. I think people have established me as that RGO guy, that Ringo.
Yeah, tell us about. You got to share that story.
I don't know why people can never remember our name, but I get every other name that starts with S except for Stuart. So I'm most often called Scott. So when people get my name wrong, I start going John, Paul, George, Ringo. And so I have a nickname for Ringo, which is what I used for my call sign, RGO.
And I feel your pain because I get Steve, Sean, Scott. Yeah, I get them all too. Anyway, today we're here to talk about small station contest. They can't use small pistols. I think that's trademark. The Q5 guys, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about just getting started into contesting as a small station. So when I mean small station, you're talking 100 watts or less. Maybe you have a vertical antenna or a wire. We're not talking about the podcast that dropped with K3LR. You're not a big multi, or not even what I operate with, high power and directional antenna. We're talking, maybe a single wire antenna, maybe a vertical, 100 watts or less. That's an area that you've kind of excelled in. Tell us about that. Well, first off, tell us about your ham radio journey, how you got started, and then evolution into doing contesting.
So my ham radio journey starts back in 1982. I'm 17 years old. I participated in a Scouts Canada event called the National Jamboree, Scouts Canada Jamboree, and I was on staff working as a youth leader. And for the time, mid 80s, technology, PCs and technology were expanding. And we had a pavilion, which was sort of a really big tent. And we had new computers, which were IBM PCs back in the day. We had robotics, and we had ham radio in the pavilion. And we had Victor Echo 3 Sierra Charlie Juliet, or Scouts Canada Jamboree, was the call sign they got for the duration of the Jamboree. And we didn't get to operate very much, but we kind of saw it there. And, I put that on hold as I went to college and started a life and so on. And then COVID comes around and everybody has to learn a skill. I think I tried the harmonica. I tried making bread, didn't succeed at either of those, and then said, hey, there's that ham radio thing. And a friend of mine that I knew through cycling mentioned a course in a club in Southern Ontario, and I took the course remotely and passed the exam and had a lot of fun, and started with a 2-meter radio and this, that, and the other thing, and then had my first contest was the RAC Canada Day contest in 22. And my big accomplishment that day was, and I was running QRP, and I got a France station, and I thought that was the best thing until I looked at the points, and I didn't get any points for it because it was not a Canadian station. It wasn't worth anything, but I'm going, that's way cooler than all the guys in Canada for me as one of the first HF contact. And then later that same year, I came out to Nova Scotia, and by that time I had Jaegu X6100, and I took that with me on CQ Worldwide, no, not CQ Worldwide, sweepstakes. And I ran sweepstakes and I won the maritime division for QRP phone only with a massive 12 contact and hammers as my logger. Again, didn't know anything about logging, didn't know anything about it. I was just trying to make a few contacts, and I made 12 contacts, and I won a plaque for sweepstakes in my first year.
So that makes a big point, because there was some comments on my K3LR video. How do you you compete against the K3LRs of the world? Well, you're not. You're not. They're a big multi. You're a QRP guy, with a Zagu G90 and with 12 contacts winning that category.
Yeah, it was an X6100, but same, a little less power than the G90. But yeah, it's find the category where you can excel. Look at what it is. I have a friend here, and this is what he does. I mean, he has a flex, and he has 3 or 4 different vertical and wire antennas, and he looks for various categories, whether it's a single band QRP that he knows that he can spend a lot of time on or so on. I often myself compete all band, and I only really have 40 to 10 here, and I do have a slice of 80 on a vertical, but it is so thin. Like you go about 40 or 50 kilohertz off 3800, and you start to have problems finding anyone. The end fed out in Nova Scotia is 80 to 10, and I've done really well on that. I think the best result was I was #1 rookie low power in CQ Worldwide Phone 2 years ago.
And that's what matters. You're not competing against the big guns of the world. You're just working your own category there. And as I told Tim during our interviews, Tim, I'm not out to win the entire WPX. I have no chance of even finishing high in Canada. Well, I have a better chance of finishing high in Canada, but I have no chance of winning worldwide on WPX. But I do have a chance of placing high in Canada and actually #1 in New Brunswick. That's a very good possibility. First off, there's not a lot of contesters in New Brunswick, myself, V9XX, and maybe a handful of others that do phone only. I mean, the other guys do all, multi-mode, although WPX this weekend is only single sideband. During the other big contests, they're multi-mode, right? So I got the nice little phone only piece, cut to myself. That's and Peter, V9CZ, the same way, but he's in the low power category. Yeah. So you're not competing against the K3LRs. You're in your own little bubble, as you say, finding that nice little niche to get into. And I think that's very, very important to realize that compete where you want to compete, and you kind of nailed it on the head there with what you got.
Yeah, and I think it's even so more than worrying about the category is, can I do better than I did last time given the conditions of the contest? Because every contest is slightly different because the conditions are not the same as they were last year, and everybody who gets on will after the fact and starts commiserating online will go, oh, conditions were excellent, or conditions were terrible, or this, that, or the other thing. And it's going like, did I do all that I could do in this situation, given how I was, to get as high a score as I could? I mean, this last weekend, and we're going to talk about QSO parties, I was on the Virginia QSO Party. It was kind of horrific because I could only work 40 meters, and that's partly because of where Virginia is relation to me here in Ontario at the time, and the conditions on the weekend, right? We were hit by a geomagnetic storm, so you work what you can hear, and if you can't hear it, you move on and find something you can hear, right? And for the most part, I doubled most of the other guys in the club. They didn't put in as much time because it wasn't of interest, but I kind of sort of doubled the guys in the club here in Ontario of their contacts. But that was what I was interested in doing that day. It can start as, because, and we've talked about this before, for people who don't know, there's a thing called the State QSO Party Challenge, which is how many state QSO parties can you work at least 2 contacts in over the series of the 47 state QSO parties in the year. So I like doing that. I was on a cruise this year, and I've already missed 2, which are the Carolinas. They were on a weekend. We were on the boat. I did think about asking the captain, but they're pretty no ham radios on cruise boats these days. So I didn't take a rig with me this time.
I did the Russian DX contest this past weekend, and the band conditions were absolutely brutal. But I did manage to work probably, I think I finished with 499 QSOs, of which maybe 150 of them were, our Russians or uniform alphas or whatever variable of that. You like to do the QSO parties. I like to work in the national contests, like the Coupe de Ref or the Belgian contest. So this kind of question leads into it. Is the QSO parties, and Tim K3LR kind of alluded to this as well, do you find the QSO parties to be a great place for new contesters to get started in?
Oh, absolutely. I think you can make whatever level of interest that you want to start with. We can even go back to our roots for both of us where you and I met, which was doing POTA. POTA is the non-contest content, right? It's contest adjacent. It's contest like. It starts every day again, and you can see how well you can do in that day. QSO parties are kind of nice in that they're a smaller participation. If you get onto the big contests like the ones we haven't mentioned yet, the CQ Worldwide or the ARL DX or sweepstakes, they're just a cacophony of sound on whatever mode you want to try. And if you don't know how to play in them, you can easily get wiped out and discouraged. And I think QSO parties are a step up from POTA and then a step into the national contest to give you a stepping stone of what is it interested in, what does it take to work all these places. And again, if you're a collector of things, which many of these contests are based on is collecting things. So the history that a lot of people don't sort of understand about QSO parties is they really came out of county hunting. A lot of people know about worked all states and worked all zones and worked all whatever. So, worked all Canada and so on. Well, there's a thing in the States called county hunting, and it's working all counties. And to a certain extent in Eastern Canada, the Maritime, and you can do that. And you can also do it in Newfoundland and Labrador. Worked all Victor Oscar, and they have particular rules in each of the sort of regional club. It's not a club per se, but it's a regional association, and you can apply to them and you can work all these things. And QSO parties are great for that. Collecting all these places and how many counties are there. And if you get into U.S. states, you can be guaranteed that there's always a Washington County, so you can always put that one in your log. There's always someone in Washington County for some reason. I don't know why there's always a Washington County. Well, I do, but you can work QSO parties as a way to, how do I say I want to make 50 contacts or 100 contacts? It's my first time to make 100 contacts in a day. And that's new for some people. Well, QSO party is great for doing that. Or I want to make 50 QSOs in a day. How do I do that? And how do I work both phone and CW or phone, CW, and digital? QSO parties are great to get a handle on doing that. And it gives you that kind of time limitation of a contest to figure out how you're going to do that over a period of time.
So where do you go to find information about all these QSO parties? I know you said there's 47 of them. Is there a central place you can go to find out when each QSO party is on a certain date, certain time, what the rules are?
Yep. So I'll reference your video with K3LR, which was a great video today. I watched it this morning. It dropped this morning, and I watched it right away. It was a great conversation. He mentioned contest calendar, the contest calendar.com.
Yep.
Are listed there. There's a whole separate page for state QSO parties. They are listed in every 8-day, 5-week, and 12-month period. They're all listed in there. He's got a great system where it's all cross-referenced and it shows you all of them. There's also a page for the State QSO Party Challenge called stateqsopartychallenge.com, I believe. And you can go look up all the QSO parties there. There's a groups.io page called qsoparty.groups.io. You can look at, and you can just pretty much put in any state or kind of province in Canada and find out about a QSO party. If you just type in, Ontario QSO party. I know everybody wants to talk about Ontario, but they're coming up in April. So they're one. You can find us at ACQP.ca for the Atlantic Canada QSO party, and our website is up there. Currently, the 2025 rules are there. We do have to make some updates, and we're in that process right now of updating the rules. And by mid to late April, we should be finished the rules, and we should be ready for our contest in the beginning of June.
Yeah, I did the Ontario QSO party last year, and I think Ontario and Quebec are on the same weekend.
Ontario is Saturday, Sunday, and Quebec is Sunday only on a weekend in April. I won't tell you what it is because I'll probably get the date wrong because I'm not looking at it, but it is available on
the contestcalendar.com. I think there's 5 QSO parties in Canada. The British Columbia has their own. The Prairies have their own. Ontario, Quebec, and us here in Atlantic Canada have our own.
Yeah, and kind of that's a segue into why did we start the Atlantic Canada QSO Party. I kind of looked across the map because I spent time and I've done the Worked All QSO Party Award. So quick segue, there is a Worked All QSO Party Award. So if you work more than half of the QSO parties, so that's 23 or more, or 24 or more of the QSO parties, there's an award for it. If you're a person who likes awards and likes wallpaper in your shack, there is a State QSO Party Challenge Award for the highest score you can get, and a separate one for the number of QSO parties that you can get. I have worked all QSO parties, all of them that were available in a particular year, twice, last year and then 3 years ago. And then you can use any one of those. And when I looked at a map, I kind of created a map, and I realized that there were 2 areas in North America that didn't have a QSO party, because QSO parties are, for the most part, are a North American phenomenon, or at least the state QSO party is, and the provincial QSO party is. It's Alaska, the Canadian territories, and the Atlantic provinces were the only areas that didn't have a QSO party. I don't live in Alaska, and I don't live in the Northern Territories in Canada, but I do spend at least half of my year in Atlantic Canada. So I wanted to give Atlantic Canadian operators that opportunity to participate as a hunted or the activator in a QSO party, which is a fun experience. It can be a fun experience, right? Everybody's looking for you on that day. And we held the first one of the Atlantic Canada QSO Party last year. It did run for 3 years by the Maritime Contest Club back in the early 2010s till 2013. And they weren't able to continue it, and we looked to resurrect it last year. And as a separate group, we started up. Full disclosure to your audience, Stuart, you were a big supporter of ours, and you were on the committee last year, and you did help us out with a lot of marketing and helping us create our website, which we thank you for. And your participation in the contest itself was absolutely fantastic. So, and again, full disclosure, you were the overall winner in not only in the high power category, but in the first place in that. So, congratulations on that.
Because I didn't sleep the whole weekend, at least the contest period. So before we jump into that too deeply, though, there's a couple other things I want to kind of touch on with regular contesting. So QSO parties, to kind of put a bow on that, the whole idea. So if you're in, let's say us guys here in Atlantic Canada, our goal is to work as many stations we can work stations within Atlantic Canada, but the goal is to be out there working stations that want to hunt us. It's kind of like POTA, right? If you're at a POTA park as an activator, people want to work you, not so much you wanting to work others. The goal is for having people work you in that region. If you're doing the New York State, we'll touch on that. That's a little different, that one. But if you're working the Minnesota QSO party, you get point for working stations in Minnesota, not necessarily anywhere else. I think that's the rule for almost all of them, except for maybe one or two others.
Yeah, the general focus is people outside of the target area are trying to work as many operators in the target area, whatever it's defined as, because it could be a single state like Virginia or Minnesota or New York, or it could be a group of states or provinces like the Canadian Prairies QSO Party, which is Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. There's ourselves in Atlantic Canada, which is Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador. And then there's the big regional one in the US there's New England, but even bigger than that is the 7QP area out west, which stretches from Arizona, New Mexico, all the way up to Washington, and Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada. I'm probably missing something, but everything that's in the 7 call area, because they all had little QSO parties that all weren't doing very well. And except for Washington, I think they've all collapsed now into the 7QP regional one.
And that's really because just the population in those places are a little more sparse than, say, a New York or Virginia or something like that. They bring them all together.
And it's similar with us. We have a vibrant, active small ham community in Atlantic Canada. And this gives people more of a chance to get Atlantic Canadian hams on one particular day. So, yourself and Peter and Rich, Victor Echo 1. I'm blanking on it. RPX, and he's going to kill me because he's one of my best friends in Nova Scotia. You're called up to remember something. I can remember a call sign at a drop of a hat, but you ask me about it, I go, I don't remember what that is. Anyway, Rich have been out often and frequently. Have put the Atlantic Canada provinces and parks on the air, and that's a great thing about QSO Party. You can combine it with any one of these activities: parks on the air, lakes and lagoons on the air that Peter's in charge of, bunkers on the air, summits on the air, whatever on the airs that you want to, islands on the air. You can add all of those together at the time you're doing a state QSO Party. There's no reason not to.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked to Sebastian Delmont from KEI2D, who does POTA and the New York State QSO Party.
Yeah,
he does 3 or 4 different parks in different counties and rows around the day. So yeah, there's lots of things you can do. That so QSO parties are a great place to get started as a contester, especially if you're a small station with like I said, an infed half wave and a 100-watt transceiver. You can do very, very well there. The next level up, of course, is the national ones. We talked about the rack contests, the Coupe de Ref in France, the Russian DX contest. Those are a little different. And there's really no consistency across the board. For example, Russia this weekend, you can work any station in the world. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
But France, you can only work French stations.
Yep.
So you got to make sure the point of the story is read the rules.
Yeah. Every one of these you want to do read the rules, and I sort of give new QSO Party participants a couple of pieces of homework. Is one, it's great to listen to me and I give a presentation of how to participate in a QSO Party, your first QSO Party, what to do. And really the thing is read the rules, figure out when it is, get a log ready, have fun on the air, make contacts, and forget that it's a contest, but see how well and how many contacts can you make. For some people, that's, can I make 5? Can I make 10? Can I make 20? Can I make 50? Can I make 100? And you get to a point where, hey, I'm experienced at this. I can make more than 100. I can make a couple of 100. And I know people look at us and listen to us and go, a couple of 100 QSOs in a day? Why would I ever want to do that? It's a challenge that we take for ourselves. And if you want to do 10 QSOs in a QSO party, that's great. Submit your log. The last thing is submit your log. So log them. Hopefully log them appropriately because you've read the rules or you've asked questions, and then submit your log. Doesn't matter what the contest is. You will do a great favor to any contest organizer and any contest participant by submitting your log, even if you make 1 contact or 2 contacts. I've been in the ARRL VHF contest, and I am not a VHF guy, but I turn on a VHF radio and I make a contact or 2. But I want to support the guys I made the contact with and give them the contact to make sure that it doesn't get wiped out on them by submitting my log. So as an operator, it's kind of, hey, that's what I participated, I played, I'll submit my log. And it's important. It is important to submit your logs because some contests, like the King of Spain contest, 1 contact, if you make a contact with me and I'm your only contact, that's a busted call for me. Yep.
So very, very important to submit your logs. You talk about submitting your logs. What logging software is the best for somebody, just dipping their toes? Let's say dipping their toe in a QSO party. What logging software would you recommend? I mean, there's all kinds of them out there, and there's N1 and MM, which is, in my opinion, one of the better ones. But it's not something I would want a newbie to try to configure or figure out.
Yeah, and we can give you help with setting those up. If people want to email us for Atlantic Canada QSO Party, we can help with that. But you're right, N1MM does take some getting used to, but I think any logging software does. But if you're a POTA person or you're a portable person, start with KI2D's Polo, Ham2K. There's a state QSO Party engine in there, and he supports, for us, the Atlantic Canada QSO Party, as well as New York and a half dozen others. He may support all 47 by now. His development is great. I haven't looked at it in a little while, but Rich, V1, I've done it again.
RPX.
He's going to kill me after this. You better edit this in post.
I'm going to send him the link.
You're going to send him a link.
And
Yeah,
I'm not going to edit it out.
Yeah, RPX. Obviously I haven't made enough QSOs with Rich in the last little while that I know that it's there. He's going to kill me. I'm going to get trouble for this. But that's what Rich used last year for his submission was Ham 2K POTA.
I might even try that because I run a Mac, and it'll be nice to have it on my Mac for sure.
Now it all depends on what you want in a logger, and we can talk about this. Like starting out, it matters less because you're going to make a QSO, whether you write it down on paper and then put it in a logger. You're going to do anything as long as it's in the right format, which all the rules tell you what the format needs to be. You're going to be able to get it in. But as you increase in speed and tempo of how many contacts you want to make it in a contest, you're going to want a logger that is more contest oriented. There are lots of them out there. Probably the two biggest ones on PC are N1MM, followed by N3FJP. N3FJP does not support Atlantic Canada QSO Party and doesn't support all the QSO parties. They support several of and they support many of the biggest ones, but they don't have an engine for all the QSO parties, and that's due to the limited time that their staff has to work on all the various contests out there.
And I think they have to create a separate executable for each contest.
Yeah, that's their model. N1MM does not do that, but N3FJP does. But N3FJP is a great piece of software, and when it supports the contest you want to run, it's absolutely great. Great for things like Field Day and many other contests. So it's a great piece of software. It is a commercial piece of software. You do get to try it for a little while, I think, and then you have to sort of purchase it along the way.
I think 50 contacts.
Yeah. I don't know what the limit is, but there is a limit. N1MM is a group, a freeware product. They would take donations if you want to make donations, but that's when you become a really big contester to use it. So Skookum Logger on Mac supports it. We have a list on our website that supports the various, that tells what loggers supported us last year. The other one I didn't mention that I want to pull out there for their support was DXlog, which is when you go beyond N1MM in your contesting, the next contest logger you want to look at beyond N1MM, beyond its reach, is DXlog, DXlogger, and that's what many of the very biggest stations use, the multis and so on, and the K9LA, N6, MJ. That's what those guys use. I believe they use DXlog. So.
I didn't even know about that one, so I'll have to go check it out after we're done here.
It's sort of it looks like you've gone back to DOS days because it's a very simplified set of window, and it provides a desktops within the program. So unlike N1MM, one of the things about N1MM is there are a million different windows for different things, and you can configure each of those windows how you want, but there's also a million different windows for all the things or pieces of information, and you may not know where everything is. This is a cleaner, simpler desktop, and it is more reminiscent of older applications. So people who want very modern applications and love like World Radio League, which also supports many contest QSO parties, by the way, a DXlog is probably not for you.
I wonder if World Radio League has got their scoring figured out, because the biggest issue I had with it, I tried it for, I think, 3 contests during the winter contest, and I gave up on it.
Yeah,
because they weren't scoring things properly. So
yeah, I don't know. I haven't used it. I think I have used it once or twice to play with it, but I've never used it in a live contest or another one. But I think that's a way that, and you'll probably ask me where is ham radio going in the future? I think that type of logger, and I know yourself have used for many of your programs and through WWA have used HamCloud, HamCloud.
Yeah.
I think those online tools are going to come integrated into the loggers, or will potentially replace the loggers going on, and there'll be a different and better interface that people will demand more of it. If you look across computing for amateur radio, I think in many places it's lacking. It's dated and it's got history to it. And as people and UIs are changing, those tools are going to want to come to the forefront, and people are going to be more interested in them.
And even just the whole AI, role that's going to play it. I can see ham radio logging software for contesting going like we did with WWA, real-time checking, real-time results.
Yeah.
So you're not sitting there, 6 months later wondering, okay, how did I do, right?
Yeah, I'll fall on the sword, learning how to score a contest after the fact and getting the results out.
But even the other ones, like even some of the big contests like CQ Worldwide, right? I'm still waiting for AWL 10 meter, and that was in December. Right now it's end of March. They still haven't released the final scores for that. These softwares and the technologies will just help make that so much faster. So Ham 2K Polo, I haven't used it myself for contests, but you all know I'm a big fan of it. Yeah, I may try that for the next QSO party I do, just to see how it works. N1MM, if you like contests, I have to agree with you. The N3 FJP, that's the one I first used when I got into contesting. There is a fee for that service, but it works really well. It is a very, very graphically pleasing piece of software.
Yes.
Where N1MM is, as Sebastian puts it, software electrical engineers designing software for electrical engineers.
It has a plethora of windows that provide a variety of pieces of information. And once you're used to it and you understand it and you want to customize it the way you want to, very configurable. I think the biggest barrier to entry for a new contester is too much to configure at once with N1M.
Yeah, I agree. So before we move on to the ACQP, the last contest component is the big guns. So WPX is this weekend. Things like CQ Worldwide, AWL, we talked about the 10 meter contest. Those are the big contests, 48 hours long. Obviously the big guns are, transmitting with their 6 kilohertz wide signals, a kilowatt and a half of power. I'll call it a small fish in that big pond. What tips can you share with a smaller station who wants to maybe play in those big contests?
I think there's two things you probably have to do. The first one, I think all contesters have to get used to doing that. And you talked about it on the interview with Tim Duffy, was the idea of search and pounce, changing around the band, chasing the multipliers for the contest, the thing that improves your score, which you found out because you read the rules, and being willing to move across bands and whether you're using spotting or not using spotting. I would encourage all beginning contesters to use spotting assistance to make as many, if they want to increase the number of contacts that they make, rather than just twisting the dial. Twisting the dial, you can go, but you're going to miss a signal in there, and signals are going to be on top of other signals, and it's going to be a challenge for you. You can use spotting assistance in most of the contests to find stations, and you should learn to do that and say, last time I got 10 stations. Can I get 20, 30, 40, 50 stations in this by using assistance? When you've got that, and now you're getting maybe 100 or more, again, it all depends on how big a scope that you want as an individual for your contest. Again, you're talking about a new contester, right? I remember the first time someone said I should go for 100 contacts in a 48-hour period. I thought they were absolutely nuts. How am I going to make 100 contacts in, even 48 hours? I've never done that before. I don't understand how anybody can do that. And then you start looking at the contest scores, and you obviously see people make far more than that. It's getting the idea to challenge yourself to do more. The next thing is calling CQ in a contest. And if you're already over mic fright, which is probably the first thing that new hams, not even new contesters, but new hams will have to deal with. Once you've done, whether it's POTA or whatever else, and you're out there used to calling CQ, get in a contest and start calling CQ. That's a different beast altogether. And it's a fun challenge to challenge yourself with. And that will increase or improve your score, because now people have someone to contact. There are a lot of people doing search and pounce. I don't know if there's any numbers out there. There are far more people doing search and pounce than there are people calling CQ. In the big contest that we were just talking about, this can be a challenge. I think we had a conversation about going higher up in the band and being on the, sort of the edges of the band for people to find some clear space for you to call it. But once you get out there and start calling and somebody spots you'll run a pileup, and running your first pileup in a contest is a wonderful experience. It's a little bit scary at times, but it's something all of us can do if we can open a mic and talk on the radio.
And you and I, like you mentioned earlier, we first met event during the Parks on the Air days. You and I are both taking a little bit of a step back from regular activating. But my Parks on the Air experience was, now I didn't have mic fright. If you remember, I was a signaler in the artillery, so
You do.
talking fast and having to listen for key information was something that was drilled into me at a young age. Going out and doing Parks on the Air and getting smaller pilots on there is a really good training ground, because if you make a mistake on Parks on the Air, at the end of the day, who cares, right? It's not the end of the world. A mistake in a contest because you're not prepared for those pileups and you start bumbling your words or not hearing call signs properly, that will affect your score, but also reflect the other guy's score, right? So I think that's Parks on the Air and programs like that are a great training ground for getting into contesting.
Absolutely agree with you. Any of the on the air programs that give people, and the biggest value to me that they give is they give people a reason or an excuse to get on the air. Not everybody is comfortable just going out and calling CQ and having people talk to them. And I think we've had a cultural shift, certainly with younger hams today. They don't talk to people on the phone, and maybe I'm making broad, sweeping generalizations and so on, but I look at my own sons and my own young people that I know, they're less interested in making, phone contacts. They might want to make digital contacts, or I've seen a great ascendancy of young people wanting to do Morse code, not necessarily pick up the mic and talk, but, getting over that first step of talking to someone on the air and screwing it up. And that, you're absolutely right. Any of the on the air programs are great for that. I will challenge you one thing. It's important to get it right in a contest, but you only get that by experience. You do that by making mistakes. Yeah. So don't worry about making mistakes in a contest. If you make 100 contacts and they're all mistakes, we got to fix something. We got to work with you. But I encourage everybody to try. If you get on in a QSO party like the Atlantic Canada QSO Party and you're not quite sure of the exchange or the proper format, take your time and work it out. You say, hey, calling CQ for the Atlantic Canada QSO Party. Somebody, Victor Echo 9, Charlie Foxtrot, comes back to you. Hey, Stu, how are you? Great to have you on the air. Yeah, I'm here in Kentville, Nova Scotia. Oh, do you know what county that is? Yeah, we're in Kings County. I think the proper exchange for that is NSKGS. I think that's how a QSO party can go, as opposed to something like CQ Worldwide, WPX, or something where a lot of operators will be in a rush to work through you. And that's why Parks on the Air, QSO parties get you ready and prepared for doing the bigger contests, and they're a great training ground. And any contest you're in, you can take at the speed that you want to do. It's just like Morse code. You can tell somebody QRL and slow down, or QRS and slow down, and you just go at your pace. It's all about you. They don't get the contact if you don't talk to them.
And the key point is you're always going to be learning too. So I was out last year doing Parks on the Air activation at a lighthouse in PI, and I can't remember the contest. It was a big European one. I think it was a European HF champion. I can't remember exactly which one it was. For some reason I didn't check the contest calendar that weekend and decided to go out and do Parks on the Air instead. I was making contacts with all these Germans and European stations, and one guy asked me, I can't even remember what it was he asked me for now, and he asked me for something a QRS or something like that. I can't remember the exact terminology used. And I went, what the heck is that? Yeah. And I've been contesting for a while and never heard. So you're always going to learn new things, right?
I think it was a QTG.
QTG, that was it. Yep.
And it'd be the Worked All Germany contest, WAG.
It wasn't. No, I did that one from home. It was another one similar to that. Yeah.
Worked All Europe. Sorry.
Worked All Europe. That's what it was. Yeah. And they were asking for that, and I went, "What the heck is he talking? I don't have that. Sorry."
Yeah. So just to explain for anybody who wants to know, a QTG is you can score in the Worked All Europe contest additional points by collecting these QTGs, which are groups of contacts. The person you're working. So the German operator asked Stuart for a QTG, and what he was asking for was, give me the last 5 or 10 contacts you made with other people, and I will also get points for those. not the same rate, but I will get additional points for those, and that's what I was looking for.
And your logging software will help with that, of course. All right, so let's segue into the ACQP, the Atlantic Canada QSO Party, coming up for year number 2 under the new management. So obviously you saw there was a void in the QSO parties. Got a group of us together, myself, Rich, Pete, Peter, and what was the guy in Newfoundland's name now? Mike Ryan, yeah. He always calls me during contests, and I can never remember his first name. So like, you're Rich, I can never remember Mike's name. But anyway, so we got on the, we got together and created this nice little fun contest for Atlantic Canada. So you're coming up on year 2 now. What, first off, when is it? Usually in June sometime. And why should, people that are in this far in the video, why should they participate in it?
So it's the first Sunday in June, which is a change this year. We moved from Saturday to Sunday because Halifax has their big Hamfest flea market on the Saturday, and we didn't want to compete with that because a lot of our operators will be there, and a lot of people travel from both New Brunswick and all over Nova Scotia to get to the flea market. So we wanted to have operators have the opportunity to do both on a weekend. So we've moved from Saturday to Sunday this year. So that'll be Sunday, June 7th. And we've also modified the hours. We're starting at 1400 Zulu, which is 11 a.m. Atlantic, I believe, to 10 p.m. Atlantic, which is 0100 Zulu.
So basically a 12-hour contest.
11 hours, yeah. We were 14 last year, and we received a bit of feedback that maybe that was a little bit long. And our original intent was it being given us opportunities, one, to get 80 meters in the morning, and also 80 meters in the evening, and a chance for the West Coast of North America to be able to work us, like the Californians and the folks from BC and so on. And we felt there were quite a drop off in number of operators operating during those hours, and it was a little bit long of a day for 14 hours for a QSO party contest. So we trimmed it back a little bit this year.
You're still going to get the 80 meter window, and you're coming, starting up in the prime, the prime higher band. Although 10 and 15 during that time of the year is a little tougher, but you'll have 20 will be in play. 40 for regional, and of course you'll get 40 and 80 at night. So I think it's a perfect plan.
And we hope to have a little 15 and 10, but it is early June, and that is a time. But then we want to get the mobiles out on the road. And if we go any earlier in the year, you can have a problem getting mobiles onto the road because some back roads may not be available. It's too cold for people to be out and wanting to operate a lot earlier than that in Atlantic Canada, because you can have snowstorms right into April, mid to late April in Atlantic Canada. And if we go any later in the year, then we get into hurricane season. So you were asking me, what are some of the challenges of putting on a contest? Well, one, finding a date on the calendar where you can run the contest that isn't in conjunction with some other contest, because it's also the ARRL digital contest weekend. We looked at entries from Atlantic Canada, and there were not a lot. There are some, but there are not a lot, typically, historically, for that we could find recorded. So we felt we weren't taking people away, and people are able to communicate in both and participate in both if they want to. So we're trying not to upset other content.
Yeah, like I was talking with the organizer from the All African contest, which is also this weekend. I said, do you know you guys like smack dab right in the middle of WPX? And the guy's response was, oops.
Yeah.
And
if it's the All African contest, everybody wants to work them for WPX for all the prefixes. So it's maybe not a bad thing.
No, it was a pretty poor attended contest last year, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I said to the guys in our little chat group, I said, I won the whole contest. And I go, if I won the whole contest, it was not a very well attended one. But you pick, the importance of the date for like June, you're never going to get the perfect date. But so, too early, you're still running into some potential winter issues and roads being closed during spring thaw. Too late in the year, hurricanes do come up here from time to time.
Yep.
But you're smack dab right in the middle of mosquito season.
That is true. There was you can only choose so many things, and as I have learned, the mosquitoes are real in Atlantic Canada. Operators will have to combat them as well as the atmospheric conditions. Tell me anyone else I can go, otherwise I don't have a lot of room, because the QSO Party season sort of drops off in July and August. It starts late August and goes to October, and it's pretty busy in that time and goes through until about when we are on just before field day. And then it's kind of, so, you can't, there's never a perfect time, right? I could put it in February, but then I'd never get a mobile, and it would just not work out. So we took the best of what we could get to deal with it. And, hopefully we have a little bit of wind to blow the mosquitoes away. But
well, I bought last year on Amazon a little mosquito hut. So it fits perfectly over my table that I take out to do portable. And if you're doing one of these mobile ones anyway, you're sitting in your truck, and you can, I got screens for the windows for the truck. So all good. Yeah. All right. So ACQP.ca is the website there. Again, if you have any questions about small station contesting, you can look up Stuart on his QRZ profile, VE3RGO or VE1RGO, that go point to the same place. And I'm sure he'll be more than happy to lend a helping hand. I know you mentioned earlier, before we get into wrapping things up, I do have to ask you about your vision for ham radio in the future.
I'll give you two. We often get asked about what's the vision for Atlantic Canada QSO Party. We're never going to be the largest QSO party on the market. That's wrapped up by California and Florida and 7QP. We're not looking to challenge those, but we're looking to be on the map and give Atlantic Canada operators a day of operations and fun where people are looking for them. That's our role. I would love for 50 to 100 operators to consistently be from Atlantic Canada to be operating in the Atlantic Canada QSO Party. We were 31 operators last year, and we had the best comments from those operators and from operators outside. Everybody loved what we did. And if anybody remembers the day, it was not a particularly great atmospheric day. We had lots of challenges getting our signal out. And I would say the majority of our contacts were on 20 and 40 last year. Two bands were I think something like 60, or it was probably 70 to 80% of our contacts were on two bands last year.
I don't remember the condition being that bad, but then again, when you're pushing 700 watts, it's a little different. But yeah, I don't have any recollection of what it was like that day, but
it was challenging for smaller students.
Yeah, I think I finished. I can't even remember how many QSOs I finished with, but I remember having
149.
There you go. I remember having fun. And so outside of ACQP, what do you touched on the logging stuff for contesting? Where do you see this hobby going? Especially you mentioned earlier about new young hams, right?
One of the things I think we all often hear about is the conversation is that, amateur radio is dying. There are people that it's aging. That may on the surface be true, but I think you had Dave, VE3 Kilowatt Golf on the other day, who was saying in Canada, we're actually growing at 2% a year over our population, which is growing, I think he said at 1% a year.
1%, yep, 1%.
Yeah, so within Canada, where we live, what we have an active interest in, we can see it. The club I participate in here in Ontario typically runs classes with 50 to 60 people that start the class. We may not get all of them to the finish line, but we get well over 30 over the finish line each year. So that's 30 new hams from our club alone, and other people in other clubs are doing so, and according to their population and so on. So I think it's growing. I think we have to recognize, and through things like POTA, Lakes and Lagoons on the air, Bankers on the air, there's a different focus of what people are interested in amateur radio. For those who've been in the hobby for a little while, continue to encourage what the new people are interested in as opposed to telling them what to do or how to do it. Find out what they're interested in and encourage them that there's something in ham radio for all of you. You and I in our short friendship, it's 2 or 3 years, have done a lot of different things together in amateur radio. And there's Earth Moon, there's satellite stuff that we haven't touched yet, or at least I haven't. I don't think I've heard you touching it, but it's out there. It's a whole thing. There's a whole 6-meter thing. I have a bunch of friends in Ontario and out in the Atlantic provinces who are all about VHF, UHF. And there's lots of things we can do to encourage what it is that you're interested in. And there's room in this hobby for lots of people to do lots of things. You and I love contesting and DX and so on. And there's the whole world of DX. Forget contesting, man. Getting contacts around the world and getting yourself on DXCC and getting your list for DXCC is, there's just the sky's the limit. Right? Like I'm not worried about the future of the hobby. I'm worried about the participation of the people who are in it and making sure everybody has somewhere to play. And Atlantic Canada QSO Party and contesting and support and all the things that you and I can do to encourage others to get on the air and make contacts. Because that's all it is to me, is get on the air and make contacts. Whether you want to make long conversations and rag chew, or you want to make short QSO contacts, don't mess up somebody else's jam. Let them do what they want to do.
And that's the whole premise of this playlist or this channel here on my YouTube channel, is to kind of introduce things like that. I have a conversation coming up later on today with one of the organizers from the Saba Island expedition, where he took a bunch of youth out to Saba Island, Papa Japan. I can't remember the number, but they went out for the expedition, a youth group. So we'll be talking to him later on today about that. There's just so many things you can do in ham radio, from the digital side to I call it maintaining the legacy of CW. Right? Not necessarily my thing, but I've done CW professionally, and I just not my thing. Right? Not my cup of tea. But
you've had the experience with it professionally.
It's like marketing. I don't want to do marketing anymore because I did it professionally for so many years. I know what to do, and I could do it, but I sit in my chair there now going, my son-in-law just moved here from British Columbia. Total technical whiz guy. He's fixing my towers and everything this summer. Not a marketing guy. So can you help me with marketing? I said, no.
I can, but I don't want to.
I can give you some advice and stuff, but no, I'm not going to do it for you. Sorry. I'll pay your full rate for your time. Because you want to do some sort of barter. I said, no. Anyway, with that, Stuart, nice to finally get a chance to talk to you. It's been a while since we actually had a conversation, just casually over everything ham radio. Our paths don't cross very often on the radio these days, just because of personal commitments and other things going on. Thanks for your time. Thanks for taking the charge with ACQP. I'm really looking forward to participating again this year, putting Kent County, New Brunswick on the map, or wherever I decide to go. Missy's not camping this year, so she said, you can take VE9 Pup with you and go camping. I said, I just may do that, I just may do that, because I can play all the radio I want now, right? Anyway, thanks for everything you do. Really appreciate your contributions to ham radio. And again, if people want to hit you up, just look you up on QRZ. That's probably the easiest place to go. Thanks, my friend. I really appreciate it. And wish you all the luck getting everything rock and rolling for ACQP this summer.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Love to talk about ACQP, and love to get everybody on the air for ACQP, whether you're in region or you're not in region. We want to hear you on the air.
And we did say we're going to do a screen share presentation. We'll do that for another video.
We can do that.
We'll do that another video. Anyway, 7-3 everyone from Atlantic Canada, and our Atlantic Canada wannabe who's in Ontario right now. But his heart is here in the Maritimes.
That it is.
7-3 everyone.
7-3.